GALP.
Oh, I'm so tired. Time to wind down with an egg sando and a strong zero.
ポイントカードはお持ちですか？袋はいりますか？
Don't be like our boy Gaza. Be prepared next time you're in Japan and use a translation app. Get Wi-Fi coverage across Japan, eSIM, and mini router rental with Ninja Wi-Fi. Trusted by 21 million customers worldwide, Ninja Wi-Fi provides great service for an affordable price. Visit ninjawifi.com and use the code GAL for 20% off.
この番組はグランドスポンサーの提供でお送りします。
Hey guys, welcome to GALP, another episode. We talked about Persona briefly. It's been quite a wild time in the gaming space at the moment, especially for us JRPG fans. And I've been interacting with you guys on Twitter a lot. And my phone has kind of been dying because of all of the battery's getting weak on my phone because of all the notifications. So we're going to be talking about Persona 4 Remake in a little bit more detail today. Before we do that, let's get into our disclaimer for you new folks. GALP is a weekly gaming discussion podcast under the GALP Podcast Network. We're currently top 30 JRPG podcasts worldwide. We want to get there to number 1. So if you want to support us, make sure you give us a 5-star review, as well as just subscribe and download the show on anywhere where you listen to your podcasts, including Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Podbean. Whilst you're there, be sure to give us a 5-star review. I've already mentioned that. And remember, if you want to join in on the fun, then follow us on all of our socials, whether that's Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, and X, all at GAL Podcasts. Okay, so we're returning to Inaba. We're talking about Persona 4 Revival, to be precise. It got announced at the Xbox showcase as part of Summer Games Fest, which is quite interesting because obviously we had seen Persona 3 Reloaded, which is actually the remake name, get announced. And I did mention it. Normally we had a release date and things like that. We didn't get one this time. We only got a sort of 20-second teaser trailer with Yuna Arakami walking through Inaba out of the temple down the hill in the street. So yeah, I'm still trying to process it a little bit, and I'm very glad. I'm very glad that this game is coming out, that it's a thing, right? The Persona fan within me was very glad to see the confirmation. It hit different a little bit just because it was kind of spoiled from beforehand, but we kind of knew that this game was coming. We had mentioned Kazuhisa Wada himself confirming the project, hinting at more future developments in the future for Persona series. Now, like I said in the previous episode, that phrase alone, more future developments for the Persona series, has got me thinking a lot. What do I think? Well, there's hype. There's general hype just from that statement alone. What am I expecting from it? I'm expecting Persona 6. I think a lot of people are as well. But I kind of think that before Persona 6, we might see other Persona games get ported over. And some people are like, no, I don't want that, Bish. I just want Persona 6 so I can enjoy it on this console generation. But I personally think we get one Persona game per console generation. Actually, no, that's kind of harsh, isn't it? Because we did get 2 or maybe 3 Persona games on the PlayStation 1. We got 2 on the PS2. And then we got Persona 5 on the PlayStation 3. And then on the PS4, also Persona 4 Golden and stuff like that as well. So can we say that? Maybe not. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule regarding that. But I don't think we're going to see Persona 6 on the PS5. I think Persona 6 is still maybe 5 years away. By that point, we would have seen a new Sony console. So it might be at the end of the PS5's console life cycle, I guess. Or they could launch it alongside Persona 4. It could be like a year thing. Because let's be honest with you, I think a lot of people now still go back to play Persona 5 and things like that. I don't think that there's a lot of reason for people to replay Persona 3 remake and things like that, even though I do love it and things like that. But I think people want new, right? They don't necessarily want remakes as such. It kind of makes sense for Atlus to have done a Persona 3 remake because a lot of people who got into the series from Persona 5 didn't necessarily know about, the previous Persona games, and they were not really accessible. If you wanted to play Persona 3 at that time, you either had to get a Vita and buy Persona 3 Portable, which some may argue is not the best version of the game to play, or get it on the PS2 and play FES, a Persona 3 FES, which in itself is very difficult to find as well. So how are we going to get access to those games? The remakes make sense, but also at the same time, the ports that they did made sense. Yes, I believe they had like AI upscaling and stuff, and so they weren't necessarily the best ports to have remade. And I believe they chose to go with portable for the Persona 3 sort of re-release before Reloaded came out. But I think that's kind of a good one to go for as well. I'm actually quite surprised that we didn't get DLC that actually included the female pro tag and then those extra social links to go with those. I think that would have been great content, and I think people would have paid a lot of money for that. That's not to say Atlus won't necessarily do that. I mean, they've released the answer. Technically, they could release Portable's gameplay as well, and obviously they just need to figure out how to integrate both of those into the game. But it would be interesting to see how they do that, right? I guess as well at the same time, they need new voices, new voice lines for those social links and interactions and whatnot. So that's besides the point. We were talking about Persona 4. There was a lot of people that kind of got into games like Persona 5 because of, Persona 4, then that led them into Persona 5. I know that's how I done it. But actually, I went Persona 4, then 3, then 5, and then I'm currently going back and playing 1 and 2. Although I know what happens in 1 and 2 because I've seen gameplay footage and I've kind of watched game Let's Plays on YouTube. So it is I know the story. I haven't actually got to experience it myself. And it looks very frustrating. So for me, I kind of understand why Atlus went in and remade Persona 3. And the fact that they remade Persona 3 means they need to remake Persona 4 because arguably Persona 4 is like one of the most beloved Persona games. And it got a lot of people into it. A lot of people got into it because of Golden. Like that was the main game to get on the PlayStation Vita. And arguably the best version of Persona 4 you could play. And we're hoping that Revival is like that, potentially better. Some people are speculating that it's not going to be built on the back of the Persona 4 Golden story. To that I say the music they used in the trailer was a track that was exclusive to Persona 4 Golden. So I did mention it in a previous episode that they might do like DLC and stuff, but most likely if they do DLC, it'll probably be Persona DLCs and stuff like that, like little bits and bobs. I don't think they'll go out with story DLC or add additional story to the game at this point. And I think all of that content from Golden is going to be there integrated into the story of Persona 4 Revival. But then who can say? I mean, at the same time, it's like Golden added more story to the game, right? Golden effectively was technically a remaster or a remake of that game, if you think about it. It was like on a PS Vita, sort of HD, maybe a little bit, maybe not. I don't think it was running at HD. I think it was still running at like 480p, at most like 600p or something like that, or 720. But yeah, Golden was, had a new storyline to it, etc. So it could be the case that they start off with base Golden and then build on top of that and add additional story. They could, because there is a lot of stuff that's kind of missing from Persona 3 to Persona 4, and then they kind of added that in with Portable. There was like links between Persona 3 and Persona 4, and we have the same thing with Persona 4 and Persona 5. So there could be that link into that. You could argue that the Q games serve as those links, but really and truly, those Q games have sort of died now with the death of the 3DS. A lot of people won't be able to access them, and actually that's something that I'm very confused about. Obviously that game kind of plays a bit more like Etrian Odyssey, another title made by Atlus, but I'm actually surprised that we didn't get to see Persona Q1 and Q2 get re-released, at least in the way that Golden got re-released, right? So there is a little bit of speculation as to why they don't do that, because obviously it uses the 2DS, right? So it needs 2 screens, but how are you going to play with 2 screens, right? So they would probably have to rework the game a little bit, but I don't really see an issue with that. I think the second screen is not necessarily needed as such, because a lot of it is kind of accessing menus and drawing a map and stuff. But you can still do that. I mean, if you just map it to a different button and then it brings up this second screen or brings up a map, like in a lot of games, right, where you just press pause and a map is brought up. They could do it that way and kind of give it to us as a Nintendo Switch 2 title. I think would be really cool if they want to keep it as a Nintendo exclusive. Alternatively, they could just bring it to consoles and bring it to Game Pass and other, Sony Games Collection or whatever they call their service. But they can kind of give us games like that, because that's a series that's kind of dying a little bit, and it kind of felt like a very interesting spin-off because it was bringing in Persona 4 characters, Persona 3, and with Q2 was bringing in Persona 5 characters as well. So, it's a forgotten game, but it is a very interesting one nevertheless. And I don't think Persona Q2 actually had English voices or a physical release. I think it was just digital only. So there's literally, if you don't have the game installed, there is no way for you to legally obtain this game anymore, which is kind of weird and kind of sucky, I guess. But yeah, why did I bring that up? I don't know. I'm bringing up like games that I want to see remade, and one game or two games really that I want to see remade is other Atlus titles. I mean, we got to see Shin Megami Tensei 5, and then we got a 3 remake and things like that. But it would be nice to get the rest of the Shin Megami Tensei games remade. It would also be nice to see the original Persona and Persona 2. And I believe Innocent Sin. I kind of get confused a little bit with how Persona 2 is structured. Okay, I did a little bit of research. So the way that Persona 2 works is that there's Persona 2 Innocent Sin, which is basically Persona 2. It's base Persona 2. We didn't get it overseas until like 2011 when Atlus actually did some remakes on the PSP. So they had these games running on the PSP, and the UI was very reminiscent of another game known as Persona 3. So I think he kind of used Persona 3 Portable as a basis for a lot of this, like sprites and UI and design in general. And yeah, we got Innocent Sin as a direct sequel for that game, which was very interesting. So it also got a PlayStation Portable release in 2012, which was very interesting. Around the time of Persona 4 Golden, I think, which once again quite very interesting. But that also didn't get a North American release, and I'm not sure if these games even got a European release, because all I can see here is a North American release. Actually, Innocent Sin did get a EU PSP release. Eternal Punishment, which is the second game, got a North American release in the year 2000. So imagine you're playing Persona 1, you really loved it, and then you see Persona 2, Eternal Punishment, which is, for all intents and purposes, the third Persona game. But this is technically Persona 3. And you have no sort of reference to the previous game. Like, that you're missing out on a whole other game, which is whole licensing and translations from back in the day. It's just, we can go in and talk for hours about that, but we're not going to. We're not going to. That game was released on the PlayStation as well. So there's actually, if you want to play the original Innocent Sin on the PlayStation, there are mods. I've seen people that have done mods to the game where they put in English patches so that they can play Innocent Sin in English. Obviously, I think they use the translations from Innocent Sin's PSP release. But this would be a really cool game series to get a remade. I would love to see a separate Persona 1 remake and a Persona 2 remake. But if they're going to do Persona 2, then I think they could do it two ways. I mean, they can give us Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment as one full game, or they can do what they did with Persona 3 remake, where you get the answer as DLC. So they can probably give us Persona 2 base game and then Eternal Punishment as DLC for that game as well. And I don't know, I think these games are pretty much almost 30 years old at this point. Let's see when Persona 1 came out. I can't even remember when the original Persona came out. Revelations Persona came out in 1996. So yeah, Persona as a series is almost 30 years old. So considering that there is going to be a 30-year anniversary of the Persona series, then I kind of think that Atlus is probably, going to go ham with that. And I kind of think that they will be remaking Persona 1 and 2. I think so. I think it's time, really. I would love to have a remake of the game done in two ways. So kind of like what they did with previous remakes. So before Persona 3 Reloaded, we got Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden, sort of in their sort of untouched status, right? Effectively the portable ports of those games. So I think if Atlus is going to rework or remake Persona 1, Persona 2 Innocent Sin, Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, then what they can do is remake it from the ground up, because obviously the gameplay mechanics are going to change as well, right? These games never had social links, you know, the combat changed a lot. There was a lot of things from those original games that made their way into Persona 5, like for example, talking to the demons themselves, like negotiating with, you know, the shadows. I believe they called it, I think it was called, was it called Shadow Talk or Demon Talk or something like that? I can't remember the actual name of it, but there was a way in the game, like you can, you know, negotiate with them. And there was a lot of interesting features in that game as well. I kind of think that, you know, they can remake it in a way where by giving us the portable versions of these games, so if they gave us the PSP ports, upscaled for consoles like they did with Golden, like they did with Persona 3 Portable, and then gave us, you know, Persona 1 and then Persona 2. Bear in mind, these are very relatively small games as well. So kind of remaking them, I think, wouldn't take that long. I mean, that's easier said than done. And we don't know if Atlus isn't already working on this. This could be a side project that they've sort of given to a smaller development team for a long time. It might be something that they were working on when they knew they wanted to work on remakes. So this could be something that is maybe 10 years in the making and we don't know about it, and they could shadow drop this. I kind of think Atlus could do that. I think they should do that. Personally, I think that would be really cool, because then it allows people to access those games, because there's a lot of people, when I speak to Persona fans, they're like, oh yeah, I love Persona, and you're like, okay, yeah, what game did you get into? Yeah, I got into Persona 5. I'm like, okay, cool. Did you play Persona 3? No, I didn't play it. You played Persona 4? No, I didn't play it. In my day, it was really weird because a lot of people had played Persona 4 Golden, and I'm speaking to them, I'm like, dude, I love Persona 4 Golden. Have you played Persona 3? And they're like, no, it's too old. I'm not playing it. And I'm like, bruh, you're missing out. You're genuinely missing out. And it's the same with Persona 1 and Persona 2. There's a lot of things that longtime Persona fans know references to, right? Like the Velvet Room music. You know, the classic Velvet Room music. Like the classic aria of the soul. That's actually being sung by someone, and you get to see them in Persona 2, and I believe in Persona 1, I think. Let me double check that, actually. Yeah, in Persona 1. So there are servants of Philemon, and I don't really want to spoil it, because when you get into games like Persona 1 and Persona 2, you know that these people in the Velvet Room, there's more to it. It's not just Igor. Igor is not the guy that just owns the Velvet Room. There is someone above him. You know, there is someone who is, for all intents and purposes, Igor's boss. But we don't know that. If you've played Persona 3 and you play Persona 4 and you play Persona 5, you don't necessarily know who Igor is, right? And you kind of learn a bit more about him in other games, but you don't know about Belladonna. She's a resident of the Velvet Room, and she's the person that sings, you know, basically the Velvet Room theme. Not many people know that. Not many people know about Nameless, another resident of the Velvet Room, who is the piano player. So there's so many different things that people get reference to, or people think, oh, that's cool, that's a pretty cool feature of the Velvet Room, but they don't necessarily know where it came from. So it would be really nice to see these characters, and it would be really nice to kind of understand a little bit more about what happened to the Velvet Room, why we don't see Belladonna anymore, why we don't see Nameless. They are still technically there. They are still technically playing the piano and singing in the Velvet Room because we can hear them. But what sort of happened to them? That's kind of interesting. Like, Philemon is a very also important character. We don't really get to see Philemon anymore, which is very interesting because, you know, he was available in Persona 1, Persona 2, a very integral part of those games. And we still get to see him referenced, right? It's odd because he appears as a butterfly. So we see him in Persona 3 as a butterfly. And it's sort of, I don't know how to explain it. It's sort of implied that the wild card ability, so the ability to fuse personas and the ability to hold more than one persona, kind of came from Philemon and his encounter with them. That's kind of why you see that butterfly, right? It is very interesting. We see this in the save points in Persona 4. We see it in Persona 4 Golden. It's even referenced in Persona 4 Q and Q2, and I think also Persona 5, if I'm not mistaken. in form of, I mean, there is a lot of butterflies, blue butterflies in Persona 5. So anyway, besides the point, so we don't get to really see these characters anymore. And there's a lot of sort of history there is a lot of history and a lot of references that a lot of younger Persona fans won't necessarily know about. And there's a lot of lore in Persona. And we can kind of go in for days and days and days and days, but I really want this episode to be a little bit shorter. So I'm not really going to go into it. And to be fair with you, there's a lot that I don't know about this. And it's very intriguing because I want to know about Persona 1. I want to know about Persona 2. And I am actively going through and playing them. So there's that. You know, I have the ability to go and play these games. And I am actively doing that. There is a little bit of frustration, though, because obviously Persona 1, I think, kind of plays like Etrian Odyssey in the sense that it is kind of random encounters. And it's a first-person dungeon, which I absolutely hate. But if they remade it and they made it a little bit more like Persona 5, a little bit, it would be cool. If they added in social links, it would be great as well. I don't know. I think there would be a lot that they could add to it and they can kind of make it their own game effectively. Not saying we want to replace those games, but it would give a lot more context to Persona. It will give a lot more story lore. And I think it's what people want to see. I mean, there'll be people that'll be like, I don't care about the older Persona games, 100%. But that's purely because they don't have the same features that the newer Persona games have. So yeah, Atlus, if you're listening, release it. I know you have it. I know you're working on it. Just release it, mate. No, I'm joking. It'll be cool if they do make it. It'll be cool if they do release it. If they do a Persona 5, some people are like, oh yeah, the next remake we're going to get is Persona 5 Remake. I would absolutely hate it. And I hate that there's people online that actually want a Persona 5 remake. Why do you need a remake for Persona 5? You've already got them on modern consoles and it can run on the PS5 and it can run on an Xbox Series X. And I believe it's also on the PC. I don't think you deserve a Persona 5 remake because there's genuinely nothing to remake on here. They can port it to future consoles. I don't have an issue with that. But to actually remake the game from the ground up is absolutely ridiculous. And I genuinely don't know what you're smoking if you really think that's a good idea. But yeah, I really do think that they need to work on 1 and 2 remakes. Persona 4 remake, I'm happy that it exists. And I'm actually very excited to see what comes off it. Are they going to change any story elements? Are they going to change any things that there were some, looking back at it now, maybe some things that were less than desirable in Persona 4. And we've kind of seen this in the past where there's some offensive things. Like, for example, in Persona 5, there were some scenes that they had removed in or amended in Royal when that came out. Are we going to see the same thing here? Are we going to see additions to social links? Definitely, we're going to get completely new methods of Persona fusions, different patterns and things like that. And what do I mean by that is that obviously, you know, there's a lot of fusion guides. I mean, back in my early days of playing Persona, I heavily relied on fusion guides, right? Yeah, basically like guides online and like IGN, GameSpot, and a lot of other websites do this, but they'll have like methods on how to fuse this Persona, like how to get Kaguya, like how to fuse this and how to fuse that, or even like doing reverse fusions where you basically, I don't know how to explain what a reverse fusion is. It's kind of like using the personas you have on hand to make other personas and then using those to make other personas, like breaking down a persona into its like core parts and like using that to make weaker personas to make strong personas. Maybe I'm explaining it wrong, and maybe I'm not explaining reverse fusions correctly, but it can get really in depth. But I'm presuming that they're going to change what fusion combinations are so that it's not exact same, which would be really interesting. I do hope that there is actually additional personas in there. I would love to see how dungeons work in this game as well, because obviously in Persona 5 you have the individual dungeons, which was kind of like what we saw in Persona 4, like your character dungeons effectively. And then I believe you had the dungeons from like the metaverse one. What is it called? I can't even remember the name. Mementos. So obviously you have Mementos, which is kind of more sort of randomly generated, similar to how Tartarus works as well. So you had the best of both worlds. You had your Tartarus experience, and then also you had your character dungeons. In Persona 4 is very different because it's all character dungeon based. And You can visit those dungeons at any time to grind, which is obviously very important and something that you need to do because there wasn't a Tartarus in that game. It would be interesting to see if there is a side dungeon, if there is a dungeon that is similar to Tartarus and Mementos, where you can kind of go in and experience like a different, I don't know, like a different level each time, something that is randomly generated. That would be really cool. So are we going to see something like that? I think that would be really interesting. Are we going to get to see more of the TV world? Because at the moment, the TV world was kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. It was basically like a PNG almost. It was like you couldn't really walk around and you just had to speak to people. Like there was like a lobby effectively, and you kind of walk around. You don't actually get to explore the TV world. It'll be very interesting to see if you can explore the TV world, and maybe the TV world has shadows in there, similar to something like Tartarus or like Mementos. And then within that, in that sort of waiting area or that lobby, you can actually go and visit the different dungeons. Or maybe there is a dungeon to then get to another dungeon. I think that would be really interesting as well. I think that would be cool. Because at the moment, it was just like, oh, I need to speak to Rise to get into was it a strip club? I can't even remember what it was. To get into her dungeon. Or, you know, you need to speak to Kanji to get into the bathhouse. That type of thing. And that was kind of, a bit annoying, a little bit frustrating, because the TV world looks so interesting. They could do a lot more with it, you know. So that's kind of like what I want to see from Remake a little bit. New personas, new dungeons. It would be interesting to see how they deal with the story endings as well. If they're going with the golden content in there directly, there is certain ways to get certain endings. There is a bad ending in Persona 3, in Persona 4 as well. If you know, you know. If you played Persona, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to spoil it. But yeah, there would be very interesting things like, are we going to see additional social links? Are we going to see additional routes within those social links? A lot of people are talking about the Yosuke social link route that got cut, where you could basically date Yosuke. Are we going to see that return? Are we going to see Atlus completely ignore it? There are so many questions, and I really want to know what you guys think. So let me know on Twitter, let me know on Blue Sky. What do you want to see in Persona 4 Revival? Whether that may be new personas, new social links, and I also want to know, who's your favorite party member? Because this is always a question that gets people angry a lot. I mean, I would say Chie, but to be fair with you, Chie is kind of useless. I don't really use Chie a lot because she's like a wind user, and I'm not a fan of wind users in Persona. Like, I never use them. They're kind of useless, right? So whether that is Chie, I'm sorry to say this. No, Chie's not wind, is she? No. Oh man, Yosuke is wind. That's it. Yosuke, I kick Yosuke out as soon as I get Yosuke. Man, as soon as I get someone else, Yosuke is out there. I don't use the wind users, so it's the same with Morgana. I didn't like using Morgana, and yeah, I think Chie was. What was Chie? Was Chie like ice? I think Chie was ice. Chie, ice. Yeah, Chie was an ice user, but not that strong of an ice user. She was mainly like physical attacks, which is, I don't know. I never really used physical attacks in Persona 4 either. So Chie was never really in my party. My main party was, I'm trying to remember. I think Yukiko was in my main party because she did some healing. She also did some fire attacks. I didn't really have Naoto with her gun. I didn't really use her a lot. It was Yukiko, it was Kanji, and it was Teddy. Now I'm thinking, if I'm not mistaken, Teddy was the ice user, no? Yeah, Teddy was the ice user. You know, Kentucky Doji. His Kintoki Doji, I think is the name, but it always sounded like Kentucky Doji to me. And yeah, no, I used Teddy a lot, and you know, I'd switch out Teddy for his human form as well. I didn't like Teddy as the bear form because he just got really annoying. But yeah, I think that kind of changed also in Persona 5. Like, I didn't really use the ice guy. I forgot his name. Yusuke. Didn't use him a lot. Obviously, Rise was what was Rise again? Rise was a navigator, so you didn't really get to use her. Although in Persona 4 Ultimax, her persona can actually deal damage. Now, here's the thing. Are we going to actually get Rise as a party member as opposed to just a navigator? I think that'd be really cool. So let's see that. Let's see that, Atlus. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. My voice cracked there. It sounded so dodgy. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And yeah, let me know what you guys think about Persona 4 Revival, and what other games you want to see remade or remastered from Atlus, whether that's Etrian Odyssey, whether that's Shin Megami Tensei, or Persona 1 and 2. Let's go, boys. See ya.